Hi, it's a cloudy day, not a sunny day. I woke up pretty early, uh, are about just over 6, and I lay in my bed. I think I should sleep more because last night I went to bed over 12. So, and I, I woke up. I woke up around 5. Yeah, just over 5. So I think, I think I thought I should sleep more. So I lay in my bed, but uh, I couldn't go into sleep anymore. Uh, uh, so I went up and took my two girls to go for a walk. That's good. And we came back before 8. So I think I just wasted 2 hours. I think yes, it's 2 hours from we came back. Um, from that time. So these 2 hours, I just had breakfast and prepare some food for our lunch. Then nothing else. I think nothing else. Yeah, that's so it's just wasted 2 hours. And I washed my face. Didn't. Oh my God! This here is some pin here. Didn't put anything on my face. So that's massage and reading. Do facial and reading. That's so good. It's just found that's good. That's a good thing. You know, I need to take care of my face. I never did. I hardly take care of my face, so this is why my skin gone. My skin um, is getting worse and worse. So I think it's time for me to take care of it. Yes, that's good. Maybe I can slow down the worse, slow down the age of my skin. Um, yeah, just slow down. I I'm not dreaming back to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and even 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I I didn't care of my face either. So I don't think 10 years or 20 years is much more better than now. So anyway, let's do facial and reading. Oh, and a good news, I got two more students. And these two students, they are so clever, are so smart girl, and so cute. Um, their mother, their mother is uh, Korean. Korean, Korean people, they look very pure. This is, I think, the word I describe uh, Korean people. They they look those women in Korea. They look so clean, so pure, so it's like an angel. Uh, Especially those little kids. The new students are two little girl, 1 6, 1 8. Wow, so beautiful. Oh, I like them so much. And mm, I told I give them, I didn't use any, those textbook. I give them material I found. I give them, fairy, fairy tale. I give them uh, uh, children uh, fiction or novel. Yeah, I give them those. So because I believe that learning language, the best way to learning language is reading. That's why I am reading. Yes, then that's reading. Don't talk too much. Yes, yesterday, today we already come here. So um, they they want to go up the plateau to see what if they are uh, islander or they are in a continent, but they already found. The engineer and his company, mute and motionless, surveyed for some minutes every point of the ocean, examining it to its most extreme limit. Even Pencroft, who possessed a marvelous power of sight, saw nothing. And certainly, if there had uh, been land at the horizon, if it appeared only as an indistinct vapor, the sailor would undoubtedly have found it odd, for nature had placed a regular telescope under his elbow. That's so funny. Uh, and certainly, if there had been land high at the horizon, if it appeared only as an indistinct vapor, the sailor would undoubtedly have found it odd, for nature had placed regular telescope under his elbow. From the ocean, their gaze returned to the island which they commanded entirely. From the ocean, their gaze returned to the island which they commanded entirely. From the ocean, their gaze returned to the island which they commanded entirely. And the first question was put by Gideon Spilett in this item. What about size? What about size is the island? Truly, it didn't appear large in the midst of the immense ocean. Um, Cyrus Harding reflected a few minutes. He attentively observed. Uh, attentively observed the uh, perimeter of the island. He he attentively observed the perimeter of the island, taking into consideration the height at which he was placed. Then, my friend, said he, I don't think I'm mistaken in giving to the shore of the island a circumference of more than 100 miles and consequently an area is difficult to estimate um, for it's so uneven, and consequently an area that's difficult to estimate, replied the engineer, for it's for uneven. Consequently unreal. Okay, let's see. And consequently unaware 地区就是地区呀、unaware 范围面积 面积 OK 面积 OK consequently an area that's difficult to estimate for it's so uneven. If Cyrus Harding was not mistaken in his calculating, the island had almost the extent of Malta or Zante in the Mediterranean, but it was at the same time much more irregular and it was at the same time much more irregular and less rich in capes from less rich in capes promotion pro, pro, promontory promontories, points, bays, or creeks. Its strange form caught the eye, and when Spilett, on the engineer's advice, had drawn the outline, they found that it resembled some fantastic animal, a a monstrous leviathan, which lay asleep on the surface of the uh, Pacific. This was in fact the exact shape of the island, which it is of consequence to know. This was this is this. This was in fact the exact shape of the island, which it is of consequence to know, and a tolerable correct map of it was immediately drawn by the reporter. The east part of the shore, where the castaways, the the east part of the shore where the castaways had landed, formed a wide bay, terminated by a sharp cape, which had been concealed by a high point from Pencroft on his first exploration. At the northeast, two other capes closed the bay, and between them ran a narrow gulf which looked like the half-open jaw of a formidable dogfish. From the northeast to the southwest, the coast was rounded, like the flattened cranium of an animal. Flattened cranium of an animal rising again, forming a sort of protuberance, which didn't give any particular shape to this part of the island, of which the center was occupied by the volcano. From this point, the shore ran pretty regularly north and south. From this point, the shore ran pretty regular north and south, broken at two-thirds of its perimeter by a narrow creek, from which it ended in a long tail similar to the caudal appendage of a gigantic alligator. This tail formed a regular peninsula, which stretched more than 30 miles into the sea, reckoning from the Cape source of the almost already mentioned. Reckoning from the Cape southeast of Ireland already mentioned, it curled round, making an open roadstead, which marked out the lower shore of its of this strangely formed land. At the narrow, at the narrow west, at the narrowest, at the narrowest part, this is to say between the chimney and the creek on the western shore, which corresponded to it in latitude. The in latitude, the island only measured 10 miles, but its greatest length from the jaw at the northeast to the extremity of the tail of the southwest was not only not was not less than 30 miles. As to the interior, as to the interior of the island, its general aspect its general aspect was woody throughout the southern part from the mountain to the shore, and arid and sandy in the northern part. Between the volcano and the east coast, Cyrus Harding and his companies were surprised to see a lake bordered with green trees, the existence of which they had not suspected. The existence of which they had not suspected. Seen from this height, the lake appeared to be on the same level as the ocean, but on reflection, the entire but on reflection, the engineer explained to his companies that the altitude of this little sheet of water must be about 300 feet, because the plateau, which was its basin, was but seen from this height. The lake appeared to be on the between the volcano and the east coast. Cyrus Harding and his company were surprised to see a lake bordered with green trees, the existence of which they had not suspected. Seen from this height, the lake appeared to be on the same level as the ocean, but on reflection, the engineer explained to his company that the altitude of this little sheet of water must be above 300 feet, because the plateau, was but a prolongation of the coast. Is it a freshwater lake? Asked Pencroft. Certainly, replied the engineer, for it must be fed by the water which flowed from the mountain. I see a little river which runs into it. I see a little river which runs into it, um, said Herbert, pointing out a narrow stream which evidently took its source somewhere in the west. Yes, said Harding, and since this stream feeds the lake, most probably on the side near the sea, there is an outlet by which the supply water escape. Yes, said Harding, and since the stream feeds the lake, most probably on the side near the sea, there is an outlet by which the supply water escape. We shall see that on our return. This little windy watercourse and the river already mentioned constituted, um, already mentioned constituted the water system, at least such as it was displayed to the eyes of the explorers. However, it was possible that under the masses of trees which covered two-thirds of the island, forming an immense forest, other rivers run towards the sea. It might even be uh, inferred that such was the case. So rich did this region appear in the most magnificent specimens of the flora of the um, temperate zones. There was no indication of running water in the north. In the north, though perhaps there might be stagnant water among the marshes in the northeast, but that was all in addition to the dunes, sand, and aridity which con- contrasted contrasted contrast contrasted so strongly with the luxuriant vegetation of the rest of Ireland. The volcano didn't occupy the central part. It rose. The volcano didn't occupy the central part. It rose on the contrary in the northwestern region and seemed to mark the boundary of the two zones. At the southern east, or at the southern west, at the south, at the south, and the southwest, the first part of the spur were hidden. Under masses of venture of war, uh, 翠绿, I think. What not what deal, what dear.
Verdure.
翠绿 verdure. At the north, on the contrary, one could follow the ramifications which died away. Ramification 延伸物支流 ramification
Ramification.
ramification
Ramification.
ramification ramifications which died away on the sandy plains. It was on this side that at the time when the mountain was in a state of eruption, the discharge had worn away a passage, and a large heap of lava had spread to the narrow draw which formed the northeastern Gulf. Let's see what lava. We already checked it. 火山岩，熔岩 and a large heap of lava had spread to the narrow draw which formed the northeastern Gulf. Cyrus Harding and his companies remained an hour at the top of the mountain. The island was displayed under their eyes like a plain in relief with different tints: green for the forest, yellow for the sand, blue for the water. They viewed it in its toned ensemble. Nothing remained concealed. Nothing remained concealed but the ground hidden by uh, verdure, the hollow of the valley, and the interior of the volcano chasm, volcanic chasm. One important question remained to be solved, and the answer would have a great effect upon the future of the castaways. What the island inhabited? Was the island inhabited? It was the reporter. It was the reporter who put this question, to which after close exam to which after the close examination they had just made the answer seemed to be in the negative. Nowhere could nowhere Nowhere could the work of a human hand be perceived. Nowhere could the work of a human hand be perceived. Not a group of huts, not a solitary cabin, not a fishery on the shore. No smoke curling in the air betrayed the presence of man. It is true, a distance of nearly 30 miles separated the operator from the extreme point. It is true, a distance of nearly 30 miles separated the observers from the extreme point, that is, of the trail which extending to the of the of the tail which extended to the southwest, and it would have been difficult even to Pencroft as to discover the habitation there. Neither could the certain of verdure, which covered 3/4 of the island, be risked to see if it didn't shelter some struggling village. But in general, the islander lived on the shore of the narrow space which emerged above the water of the Pacific, and this shore appeared to be an absolute desert. Until a more complete exploration, it might be admitted that the island was uninhabited. Until a more completed exploration, it might be admitted that the island was uninhabited. Until a more complete exploration, it might be admitted that the island was uninhabited. But was it frequented, at least occasionally, by the natives of the neighboring island? Until a more complete exploration, it might be admitted that the island was uninhabited. Until a more completed exploration, it might be admitted that the island was uninhabited, but it was frequented at least occasionally by the natives of neighboring islands. But was it frequented at least occasionally by the native of neighboring island? It was difficult to reply to this question. Um, no island appeared within no island appeared within a radius with a radius of 50 miles, but 50 miles could be easily crossed either by melee cross or by the large uh, Polynesian canoes. Everything depends on the position of the island, of its isolation in the Pacific, or of its proximity to archipelagos. Would would Cyrus Harding be able to find out uh, they are latitude, find out their latitude and longitude without instrument? Would would Cyrus be able to find out their latitude and longitude without instrument? It would be difficult. Since he was indoors, it was best to take precaution against a possible distance, uh, possible descent of neighboring native. It was best to take precaution against a possible descent of neighboring native. The exploration of the island was finished. The exploration of the island was finished. Its shape determined uh, its features made out, its extent calculated, the water and the mountain system ascertained, the disposition of the forest and the plains had been marked in a general way on the reporter's plan. They, they had now only to descend the mountain slope again, and explore the soil. In the triple point of view of its mineral, vegetable and animal resources. But before giving his companies, the signal for departure, but before giving his companies the signal for departure, Cyrus Harding said to them in a calm, grave voice. But before giving his company the signal for departure, Cyrus Harding said to them in a calm, grave voice, "Here, my friends, is the small corner of island upon which the hand of the Almighty had thrown us. Here, my friends, in the small corner of island upon which the hand of the Almighty had thrown us. We are going to live here a long time, perhaps. Perhaps too unexpected help will arrive. Um, perhaps, perhaps too unexpected help will arrive. If some ship passed by chance, I say by chance, because this is an important island. It is not even a port in which, in it, it's not even a port in which ships could anchor, and it's to be feared that it is still situated out of the and it is situated out and it is to be feared that it is situated out of the route usually followed. This is to say, too much to the source for the ship which frequent the archi, archi, archipelago of the Pacific, and too much to the north for which go to Australia. But W came home. I wish to hide nothing for our position from. I wish to hide nothing of our position from you. And you are right, my dear Cyrus, replied the reporter with animation. With animation. We have to deal with men. We have to deal with men. They have confidence in you, and you can depend on them. Is it not very, my friend? Is it not so, my friends? I will obey you in everything, Captain, said the Herbert, seeing the engineer's hand. My master always and everywhere. As for me, and as and you are right, my dear Cyrus, you have to deal with men. You have to deal with men. They have confidence in you, and you can depend on them. Is it not so, my friends? As for me, said the sailor, if I ever grumble at work, my name is not Jack Pencroft, and if you like, Captain, we will make a little American of this island. We will build two towns, and we will establish railway, start telegraph, and one fine day, when it is quite changed, quite put in order, and quite civilized, we will go and offer it to the government of the Union. Only I ask one thing. What is that? Said the reporter. It is that we do not consider ourselves category, but colonists who have come here to settle. Harding could not help smiling, and the sailor's idea was adopted. He then thanked his companies and added that he would rely on their energy and on the aid of the heaven. Well, now let's set off to the chimney, cried Pencroft. 1 minute, my friend, said the engineer. It seemed to me it would be a good thing to give a name to this island, as well as to the cape's promontories and watercourses, which we can see. Very good, said the reporter. In the future, that will simplify the instruction which we shall have to give and follow. Indeed, said the sailor, uh, already it is something to be able to uh, say where one is going and where one has come from. At least it look like at least it look like somewhere. At least it looks like somewhere. The chimney, for example, said the Herbert. Exactly, replied Pencroft. That name was the most convenient, and it came to me some of myself. Shall we keep the name of the chimney for our first encampment, Captain? Yes, Pencroft, since you have so christened it. Good. As for the others, that will be easy, returned the sailor, who was in high spirit. Let's give them names, as the Robinson did, whose story Herbert had often read to me, whose story Herbert has often read to me. Uh, Providence Bay will point, keep disappointment, or rather the name of Captain Harding. The names of Captain Harding, said Herbert, of Spilett, of Nab. My name, cried Nab, showing his sparkling white teeth. Why not? Replied Pencroft. Port Nab, Port Nab, that would do very well, and keep Gideon. I shall prefer borrowing them from our country, said the reporter, which would remind us of America. Yes, for the principal ones. For the principal ones, for those of the bays and the seas, I admit willingly. We might give to that vast bay on the east the name of the Union Bay, for example, to that hollow on the source, Washington Bay, to the mountain we are standing, the Mount Franklin, and to that lake which is extended under our eyes, that of Lake Grant. Nothing could be better, my friends. These names, these names will record our country and those of the great citizens who have honored it. But for the river, gulf, capes, and the promontories and the promontories which we perceived from the top of this mountain, rather let us choose name which will record the particular ship. They will all impress themselves better on our memory and at the same time will be more practical. The shape of the island is so strange that we shall not be troubled to imagine what it resembles. As to the streams, which we do not know as yet, in different parts of the forest, which we shall explore later, the Greek, which afterward will be discovered, we can christen them as we found them. What do you think, my friends? The engineer's proposal was unanimously agreed, and agreed to by his companies. The island was spread out under their eyes like a map, and they had only to give names to all its angles and points. Gideon Spilett would write them down, and geography nomenclature of the island would be definitely adopted. First, they named the two bays and the mountains Nation, Union Bay, Washington Bay, and Mount Franklin, as the engineer had suggested. Now, said the reporter, to this peninsula, at the west-eastern of the southwest of the island, I propose to give name of Serpentine Peninsula, and that of the reptile end to the bent tail terminates it, for it's just like a reptile's tail. Ra reptile still. What's reptile? Let's see. Reptile 爬行动 reptile still adopted 爬行动 reptile 爬行动物 like a reptile's tail adopted, said the engineer. No, said Herbert, pointing to the other extremity of the island. That's called this gulf, which is so singularly like a pair of open jaws. Shark Gulf. Captain, cried Pencroft, and we can complete the resemblance by naming the part of the jaw mandible cape. Mandible cape. Complete the resemblance. Now let's see. Resemblance.相似，外形，相似 ，complete the 相似，外形 by name the two parts of the jaw, mandible cape, mandible 互动吗？不是 mandible 下颚哦 mandible 下颚 mandible cape, but there are two capes, observed the reporter. Well, replied Pencroft, we can have north mandible cape and south mandible cape. They are inscribed. Inscribed 难以形容的 inscribed They are inscribed 翻译特别奇怪 They are inscribed. There is only the point at the southeast extremity of the island to be named, said Pencroft. That is the extremity of the Union Bay. That is the extremity of the Union Bay. Claw Cape, cried Neb. Claw Cape, cried Neb directly, who also wished to be godfather to some part of his domain. In truth, Neb had found an excellent name for this cape, was very like the power claw of the fantastic animal which this singularly shaped island represented. Pencroft was delighted at the turn things had taken. Pencroft was delighted at the turn things had taken, and their imagination soon gave to the river, which furnished the settlers with drinking water and near which the balloon had thrown them, the name of the Mersey, in the true gratitude to Providence, to the estate upon which the castaways had first landed, the name of the Safety Island, to the Clito which crawled the tap, to the Clito which crowned the high granite precipice above the chimney, and from whence the gaze could embrace the whole of the vast bay, the name of Prospect Head. Lastly, all the masses of impenetrable wood which covered the Serpentine Peninsula were named the Forest of the Far West. The nomenclature of the visible and known part of the island was thus finished. The nomenclature 命名吧 Let's see. Nomenclature. 命名 yes. The nomenclature of the visible and unknown part of the island was thus finished, and later they would complete it as they made fresh discoveries. As to the points of the compass, the engineer had roughly fixed them by the height and the position of the sun. As to the point of the compass, the engineer had roughly fixed them by the height and the position of the sun, which placed Union Bay and the Prospect Head to the east. But the next day, by taking the exact hour of the rising and setting of the sun, and by making its position between this rise and setting, he reckoned to fix the north of the island exactly. For in consequence of its situation in the southern hemisphere, the sun at the precise moment of its culmination passed in the north and not in the south of its culmination. Let's see what culmination. 顶点 So they know they are in the southern hemisphere. It seems to do to those places situated in the southern hemisphere. Everything was finished, and the settlers had only to descend. Everything was finished, and the settler had only to descend Mount Franklin to return to the chimney. When Pencroft cried out, "Well, we are preciously stupid!" "Why?" asked Spilett, who had closed his notebook and risen to depart. "Why, our island! We have forgotten to christen it." Our island. Herbert was going to propose to give it engineer's name, and all the Herbert was going to propose to give it the engineer's name, and all his companions would have applauded him. when Cyrus Harding said simply, "Let's give it the name of a great citizen, my friend, of him who now struggles to defend the Union of the American Republic. Let's call it Lincoln Island. Let's give it the name of a great citizen, my friend, of him who now struggles to defend the union of the unity of the American Republic. Let's call it Lincoln Island." The engineer's proposal was replied by three hurries, and that evening, before sleeping, the new colonists talked of their absent country. They spoke of the terrible war which stained it with blood. They could not doubt that the South would soon be subdued, and that the cause of the North, the cause of justice, would triumph, thanks to Grant, thanks to Lincoln. Now this happened. Now this happened the 30th of March, 1865. They little knew that 16 days. They little knew that 16 days afterward, a frightful crime would be committed in Washington, and by that and and that on Good Friday, Abraham Lincoln would fall by the hand of vanity，vanity 疯子吧，我记得是个疯子，fanatic yes，口说之人。They now began the descent. They now began the descent of the mountain, climbing down the crater. Climbing down the crater, they went round the cone and reached the encampment of the previous night. Pencroft thought it must be breakfast time, and the watches of the reporter and the engineer were therefore consulted to find out the hour. That of Spilett had been preserved from the sea water, as he had been thrown at once on the sand out of reach of the wave. It was an instrument of excellent equality. A perfect pocket chronometer, which the reporter had not forgotten to wind up carefully every day. Wind up. As to the engineer's watch, it of course had stopped during the time which he had passed on the dawns. The engineer now wounded up, and ascertaining by the head of the sun that it must be about 9 o'clock in the morning. He put his watch at that time. "Now, my dear Spilett, wait, you have kept the Richmond time. You have kept the Richmond time, have you not?" "Yes, Cyrus. Consequently, your watch is set by the meridian of that town, which is almost that of Washington, undoubtedly. Very well, keep it thus. Content yourself with winding it up very exactly, but do not touch the hand. This may be of use to us. What will be the good of that? Thought the sailor. They ate, and so heartily that the story of game and the story of the, the store the store of game and almond was totally exhausted, but Pencroft was not at all uneasy. They they would supply themselves on the way. Top, whose share had been very much to his taste, would know how to find some fresh game among the brushwood. Moreover, the sailor thought of simply asking the engineer to manufacture some powder and one or two falling pieces. He supposed there would be no difficulty in that. Moreover, the sailor thought of simply asking the engineer to manufacture some powder and one or two falling pieces. He supposed that would be no difficulty in that. On leaving the plateau, the captain proposed to his companies to return to Chimney by a new way. On leaving, on leaving the plateau, the captain proposed to his companies to return to the Chimney. On leaving the plateau, the company proposed to his companies to return to Chimney by a new way. He wished to reconnoiter reconnoiter. He wished to reconnoiter the ground, so magnificently framed in trees. They therefore followed the crest of one of the spurs, between which the creek had supplied the lake probably had its source. In talking, the settlers already employed the name which they had just chosen, which singularly facilitated the exchange of their ideas. Herbert and Pencroft, the young and the other very boyish, the one young and the other very boyish, were enchanted, and while walking, the sailor said, "Hey, Herbert, how capital is sound! It will be impossible to lose ourselves, my boy, since whether we follow the way to Lake Grant, or whether we join the Mersey through the wood of the far west, we shall be certain to arrive at Prospect Head and Constantine at Union Bay. It had been agreed that without forming a compact band, the settlers should not stray away from each other. It was very certain that the thick forest of the island was inhabited by dangerous animals, and it was prudent to be on their guard. And it was prudent, and it was prudent to be on their guard. In general, Pencroft, Herbert, and Neb walked first, preceded by Top, who poked his nose into every bush. The reporter and the engineer went together. Gideon Spilett ready to note every incident, the engineer silent for the most part. The engineer silent for the most part and only stepping aside to pick up one thing or another, a mineral or vegetable substance which he put into his pocket without making any remark. What can he be picking up? Muttered Pencroft. I've looked in vain. I've looked in vain for anything that's worth the trouble of stooping on. Towards 10 o'clock, the little band descended the last declivity of Mount Franklin. As yet, the ground was uh, scantily. As yet, the ground was scantily strewn with bushes and trees, and yet the ground was scantily strewn with bushes and trees. They were walking over yellowish, calcinated earth, forming a plain of nearly a mile long, which extended to the edge of the wood. Great block of the basalt. Okay, let's stop here. I feel sleepy. I sleep too little. Yes. Then we'll get a nap. Then we have a lot of things to do, you know. I need to record the story for the little girl. Stop